As the golden California sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns of the Spencer Beach house, the entire Forrester clan and their closest friends gathered for what was meant to be the crowning moment of hope, love, and renewal. The wedding of Ridge Forrester and Taylor Hayes. After months of drama, of whispered doubts and public declarations, of near misses and near tragedies, Ridge and Taylor had finally declared their love in the most unequivocal terms. An engagement as dramatic and heart-swelling as any Forrester fashion show, sealed with a ring that sparkled like the Pacific. And yet, even as the guests took their seats beneath the white-draped archway, every champagne flute poised and every violinist ready to play its first mournful note, the air crackled with tension. Unbeknownst to most, a single man stood at the edge of the gathering. A man whose very presence threatened to unravel not only the vows Ridge and Taylor were about to recite, but the very reputation of the esteemed marriage counselor who had long been credited with healing the wounds of the Forrester Logan Spencer Finnegan clan, Dr. Taylor Hayes herself. He was a former client who, years ago, had sat across from Taylor in her cozy therapy office, walls lined with abstract paintings meant to soothe, couch cushions plumped for comfort, soft lighting designed to coax confessions. At the time, he had come seeking relief from the black fog of depression that had tangled his thoughts and nearly stolen his will to live. Taylor, with her gentle bedside manner and steely clinical acumen, had prescribed a regimen of talk therapy, guided meditations, and, at her expert discretion, off-label techniques that she believed would free him from his darkest spirals. The man had improved briefly. He had left with a lighter heart, a rekindled spark of hope. But in the months that followed, he began to lose touch with reality. Experiencing sudden, transient episodes of paranoia, lashing out at imaginary threats, believing that everyone around him was conspiring to harm him. It was only when he woke up in a psychiatric ward, bound and confused, with no memory of how he had arrived there, that the full truth emerged. His diary, recovered later by his estranged wife, detailed a series of unauthorized therapy sessions, experimental treatments that Taylor had never documented in his official file. The entries described hallucinogenic guided visualizations, whispered hypnotic suggestions, and even an unorthodox mixture of pharmaceutical cocktails administered without formal consent. According to his own writings, Taylor had crossed every ethical line in her professional playbook, leaving him adrift in a sea of confusion and despair. He blamed her entirely for the weeks when he had believed himself attacked by invisible assailants, for the nights he spent curled in a fetal ball on the hospital floor, begging nurses to stop the voices that no one else could hear. And so, as Ridge escorted Taylor down the flower-strewn aisle, her gown a vision of ivory silk trimmed with lace, her smile radiant but tinged with pre-ceremony jitters, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning, he saw the man in question. Pale, hollow-eyed, clutching a battered leather journal bound by fraying twine, its cover stamped with the words, "You did this to me." A murmur rippled through the guests. Steffi's eyes widened, Finn's jaw clenched, Brooke's breath caught in her throat, and for a heartbeat everything stopped. Taylor froze beneath the arch, her bouquet of white roses trembling between her fingers. Ridge's stiff upper-lip composure snapped in an instant as the man raised the diary. In a voice strained with rancor and despair, he called out, "Taylor Hayes, before you pronounce those vows, you have a confession to make. You must apologize to me, publicly and unreservedly, for the unauthorized therapy that left me broken and terrified, or I will release these tapes." He held up a flash drive. Every session recorded. Every illicit suggestion. The proof of your betrayal. Gasps echoed through the gathering and a single string note squealed as the quartet broke off in dissonance. Taylor's face blanched. Ridge reached for her elbow, his other hand rising in a placating gesture toward the crowd. The guests craned forward, straining to hear. The man's eyes glinted with a dangerous mix of triumph and desperation as he continued. You think you can manipulate people for the sake of your career, help them smile today only to leave them shattered tomorrow? You made me lose my mind. Now you will admit your crime to everyone you've lied to, or I'll scorch your name for all to see. Taylor took a hesitant step forward, her voice quivering as she addressed the audience. This is private therapy, my methods, but Ridge cut her off, urgency lacing his tone. He has no right to do this out here, before our family and friends. We'll talk inside. The man shook his head, grim determination etched on his gaunt features. No. Today is the day you face the consequences of your choices. If you don't want this wedding to become a media circus of scandal, you will speak now, where it matters most. The assembled guests exchanged stunned glances. Hope Logan's fingers twitched at her mother's side. Carter Walton stepped protectively toward the intruder, and Brooke Logan's hand flew to her mouth as the shocking revelation shattered the idyllic veneer of the ceremony. The event planners huddled nervously, security personnel discreetly moving in, but Ridge held up a hand. For a moment, time slowed, the painterly sky, the crashing waves, the delicate bouquets all suspended in midair, waiting to see if Taylor Hayes would confess her professional sins in front of Ridge's assembled kin. Taylor swallowed hard. Her breaths came shallow and fast. The weight of her past transgressions pressed upon her like the tide, threatening to pull her under. She looked at Ridge. His protectiveness mingled with fear, his eyes imploring her to trust him, and then at the man who had once been her patient, now her accuser, whose life she was rumored to have fractured. In that long, heart-stopping instant, she realized that every therapy session note she had ever filed, every consent form she had ever misplaced, every ethical line she had ever blurred was about to be laid bare. She could concede, apologize, grovel even, in hopes of preserving the ceremony and salvaging her career. Or she could stand silent, inviting the man's wrath as the tapes went live, streaming her most private moments to an audience that would feast on her mistakes. Her lips parted, but no words came. Ridge closed his hand around hers, his grip warm and reassuring, yet Taylor knew that no amount of love could shield her from the fallout of this reckoning. Around them, the guests leaned forward as the man flipped open his diary, the pages fluttering like the wings of a captive bird desperate to escape. He searched, found the passage he sought, and in a voice loud enough for cameras that had captured every angle of the wedding to pick up, he read aloud a passage detailing the moment Taylor had instructed him to ingest a compound she had claimed would liberate his subconscious, only for him to spend the next 48 hours locked in a psych ward, convinced the world was ending. Murmurs turned to cries. Some guests gasped in horror, others clutched their pearl necklaces, the entire fairy tale tableau transforming into a tableau of accusation. The waves roared as if echoing the storm of outrage that now threatened to engulf the ceremony. Taylor's knees weakened. She glanced at Ridge's trembling lips and then at the man whose life she had once sought to mend, her patient-turned-nemesis. Finally, she drew a slow, shuddering breath and lifted her chin, her voice barely more than a whisper yet carrying across the gathering. I am sorry. Shock registered on every face. Ridge released a breath so deep it seemed to draw the very air from the sky. Taylor closed her eyes as though bracing for a blow. The intruder's triumphant smile flickered into something unreadable. In that single word, sorry, the fragile illusion of the perfect wedding dissolved. What followed was a cascade of screams, of cameras flashing, of security dragging the accuser away as he screamed, "I'll be back," into the press microphones. The violin quartet restarted in a discordant waltz, the guests scattered like startled birds, and Ridge guided Taylor inside the hall, where she collapsed into his arms, sobbing for reasons that transcended shame or regret. Outside, the world's press circled like sharks at a feast, ready to dine on every scandalous detail of Taylor Hayes's fall from grace. In the storm that followed, board meetings at Forrester Creations would be abruptly adjourned, legal teams mobilized, and the once-coveted title of family therapist would become a scarlet letter pinned to Taylor's chest. The beach house wedding, once a symbol of hope, had become the stage for the most explosive betrayal in daytime history. A moment when love and scandal collided in a way that would echo through every future Forrester runway and every therapy couch in Los Angeles. And as Taylor and Ridge faced the tumult ahead, uncertain if their vows could survive such a public wound, they held fast to the one truth that remained. In a world of shifting alliances and hidden agendas, only the raw, unvarnished acknowledgement of wrongdoing could offer any chance at redemption. As the early morning light filtered through the tall windows of Forrester Creations' Cliff House, Ridge Forrester sat alone at the head of the great oak dining table, the remnants of yesterday's turmoil spread before him, a crumpled therapy diary, a single wilted rose from Taylor's bridal bouquet, and the gorgeous engagement ring that had once symbolized his commitment to Taylor Hayes but now felt like the coldest reminder of a love that had betrayed him. Ridge traced the diamond's facets with a trembling fingertip, recalling the moment he stepped forward to accept Taylor's proposal, the rush of romance, the promise of a shared future, now eclipsed by scandal and disillusionment. His heart felt as though it had been rent in two. On one side, the knowledge that Taylor's professional misstep, however grievous, had been motivated by a desire to heal. On the other, the realization that the woman he had promised to protect had exposed him and his family to a level of public humiliation that he could not forgive. He stood up, the ring slipping from his finger and clinking against the wood floor, and walked toward the sprawling terrace overlooking the Pacific. The wind carried the distant roar of seagulls and the ceaseless crash of waves, as if nature itself were echoing the tumult in his soul. Ridge closed his eyes, steeling himself for the inevitable, the walk back to Taylor's holding cell at the Malibu County Detention Center to deliver his verdict. Inside, Taylor Hayes sat on the edge of the narrow metal cot, her once immaculate wedding gown pressed into a shapeless heap on the floor, her hair a tangled halo around her face. She flinched when the heavy steel door clanged open, her eyes rising to meet Ridge's. There was no warmth in his expression now, only the measured calm of a man whose trust had been shattered. "Taylor," he said softly, his voice carrying both sorrow and finality, "I came to say goodbye." Taylor's heart lurched as she tried to rise, her hands trembling. "Ridge, please." "I'm so sorry." "I never meant," but Ridge held up a hand, silencing her apology before it could fracture the already fragile peace. "You made your choice, Taylor. You exposed private sessions. You betrayed the vows of confidentiality. You destroyed my faith in you, and you dragged our family's name through the mud. I can't be your husband anymore." Taylor's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered, "But I love you." Ridge's jaw tightened. Love doesn't erase consequences. He turned and left, the heavy door clanking shut behind him, leaving Taylor alone in the sterile cell with echoes of the life she had lost. Within days, the courts processed Taylor's case with stunning speed, her unauthorized therapy methods deemed grossly negligent and harmful. She was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, her license suspended pending a formal review. The headlines blazed, "Top therapist behind bars, Forrester scandal deepens Taylor Hayes, from healer to harm." Across town, Steffi Forrester Finnegan received the news like a physical blow. She paced the marble foyer of her own Malibu home, her voice choked as she conferred with Finn and Liam Spencer, who had flown in at her desperate request. "We have to get her out," she implored, hands fisted at her sides. Mom didn't deserve this. She was trying to save someone's life. Finn, ever the rational voice, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Steph, the legal system has spoken. Taylor violated professional ethics. Our options are limited. But Steffi's resolve only hardened. No. We'll find a loophole, a stay of sentence, and appeal. I'll hire the best attorneys, call in every favor. Mom was framed by a vindictive ex-client. We have to prove malicious intent, not just negligence. She immediately set to work, assembling a team of top-tier lawyers and private investigators, scouring Taylor's case files for inconsistencies, tracking down character witnesses from her decades-long career, reaching out to former patients whose lives Taylor had genuinely transformed. Steffi's days and nights blurred into a fever dream of legal briefs, court dates, and fundraising galas designed to cover mounting legal fees. Meanwhile, Ridge channeled his energy into a different pursuit, reuniting with Brooke Logan. After declaring his engagement over, he found himself drawn back to the woman who had shared his past, whose resilience and familiarity he craved in the aftermath of heartbreak. He phoned Brooke under the guise of seeking solace, and she received him with a mixture of relief and caution. Their conversation began hesitantly, Ridge's quiet appreciation of her calm strength, Brooke's tentative willingness to rekindle an old flame now tempered by the memory of past betrayals. Ridge insisted he had changed, that Taylor's actions had opened his eyes to the depth of his feelings for Brooke, to the comfort of the love they once shared. Within weeks, their relationship progressed from cautious coffee dates at Il Giardino to private dinners at the Cliff House, where Ridge, softened by loss, leaned on Brooke's unwavering support. Meanwhile, Brooke confronted Nick Marone, who had recently confessed lingering feelings for her during her brief visit to comfort Ridge. Nick, whose own love story with Brooke had once seemed destined, now found himself firmly cast aside as Ridge and Brooke's reunion gained momentum. Ridge made no secret of his intentions. He invited Brooke to move into the Cliff House, invited her to join him on board meetings at Forrester Creations, and even dared to ask her to stand by him at a hastily planned re-engagement ceremony, a small, intimate gathering meant to solidify their renewed commitment. Nick, heartbroken but resigned, retreated from Brooke's orbit, focusing instead on his budding relationship with Katie Logan, though whispers in the media speculated on Brooke's scandalous involvement with Ridge so soon after Taylor's fall. Back in the courtroom, Steffi's legal crusade hit its first major hurdle. The judge ruled that Taylor's actions had directly resulted in psychological harm, and despite character testimonies, the sentence would stand, though an appeal could delay her incarceration by several months. Steffi, undeterred, doubled down, launching a public relations campaign aimed at humanizing Taylor's plight, interviews with former patients whose lives had been saved, social media outpourings of gratitude, and a charity gala to raise funds for mental health awareness under Taylor's name. Public sentiment shifted. Supporters rallied behind Taylor, viewing her as a scapegoat for a client's own instability. Under mounting pressure, the district attorney agreed to a plea bargain. If Taylor publicly accepted responsibility and completed an intensive rehabilitation and ethics training program, her sentence could be reduced to probation. Ridge, torn between loyalty to his family's matriarch and his blossoming love for Brooke, participated in secret negotiations, urging Taylor to accept the deal, providing she issue a sincere apology before the court and on national television. The day of reckoning arrived. Taylor, flanked by Steffi and Finn, took the stand in a packed press conference outside the courthouse. Cameras rolled as she spoke, her voice steady despite tears. I crossed a line in my passion to help. For that, I am deeply sorry to my former patient, to his family, and to the community I vowed to serve. The crowd hushed. The cameras zoomed in on Ridge's conflicted expression standing at the edge of the press pool, and Brooke, watching from a distance, felt the old pang of betrayal wash away in a tide of compassion. The plea agreement was accepted. Taylor's sentence commuted to 2 years of probation and community service, her license suspended but not revoked. As she stepped from the courthouse, Steffi enveloped her in a triumphant embrace, tears of relief mingling with the last remnants of fear. Ridge, seeing Taylor's contrite courage, realized the depth of her integrity, but his heart remained with Brooke, whose own tears of relief greeted him as he approached. In the days that followed, Ridge and Brooke announced their renewed engagement, planning a modest ceremony that honored tradition over spectacle, while Taylor retreated to her former therapy office, now under new management, to reflect on the line between healing and hubris. Steffi watched her mother begin the slow process of reclaiming her professional reputation. Ridge and Brooke prepared for their wedding amid the blessing of family and friends, and Nick Marone, ever the romantic, found solace in his own path forward. In a world where love is both fashion and folly, healing and heartbreak, the Forrester legacy endured, woven anew by the trials that tested their bonds and the redemptive power of forgiveness.